yeah, blood, related by blood, and or marriage, or also by what? By adoption. So you can be adopted. It could be like by adoption. Okay. Is it possible to call someone who has been a friend with you for, I don't know, a reasonable period of time? Is it possible that then they become a family too?
Yes.
So there's a possibility that you have formed really strong bonds of friendship with someone and this person becomes part of your family. So what we see is that a family really can be extended beyond blood, marriage, and adoption, that maybe a family also begins to take aspects of friendship as well. Is this true? Okay. So I have to make another assumption also that apart from Wabe, but maybe the two of you are Christians. Is this true?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to ask a question related to the Bible. What does the Bible say about the family? If we know. What does it say? You can think about it in terms of what? In terms of Genesis. I don't know the Bible that well, but maybe that's a good starting point. So that's where you have got two people coming together or being put together and somehow they start a family. Is this true?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So, perhaps we can actually think that the Bible and other religions, they look at the family beyond blood relations, beyond marriage relationships, beyond friendship relationships. So, how does the Bible begin to conceptualize, to think about the family? Okay, so we all came from Adam and Eve. Very good. Okay. So we all came from Adam and Eve. Yes, Christine.
I wanted to say this in God said, the Bible says that a man will leave his family,
Right.
and a woman will leave his family too, and two of them will live together as a family.
Okay.
That means they are not blood related, but because they are come together.
Right. Okay. I wanted to highlight a small thing about how the Bible would, or the religions, how they would begin to look at a family. Would it be helpful to think that beyond the physical, right? Beyond the physical, beyond what society says a family should be, that maybe the Bible tells us that the family is a coming together of two spirits. Yeah, the connection of the soul. If one soul is connected to the other, like, have you ever heard something that says, "I have found my soulmate"? Yeah, this is not physical, right? It is spiritual in a sense, if such a thing exists, all right? But I think that when you look at a family, you can think of a family from the perspective, from the side of what society says a family is, right? Or you can look at a family from a purely biological, blood relation, for example. So that then becomes a biological understanding of what a family is. So you are part of my family because we are related by blood. This is biological, this is physical, right? But we can also be related to each other by the process of marriage. And marriage is something that society has created, in a sense, right? So this is like a social view of marriage. But we are also saying, well, if you look at the holy writings, if you look at the Bible, you look at the Quran, and so on and so forth, you find that they also emphasize the importance of the family. But they look at the family as the coming together, not just of the physical being of people, right? But the coming together of what? Two spirits. So there's like a spiritual component to the family as well. This is true, right? I mean, intuitively, it should be like that. Well, here's a question though. We have a theory here, the family systems theory. The question is, what does this theory say about the family? Does it think that the family can be looked at as that which is based on blood relations? Does it think that the family can be looked at as that institution that is constructed by the society? Or maybe it has got a different view of the family. This is what we want to learn today. You understand that? Yeah, that's what we want to understand today. How does this theory differ from all other definitions that we have looked at before? Or maybe not just a difference, how is this theory similar to other definitions that we have already discussed concerning the family? Are we clear about that? Okay, so we start. This theory was proposed by a man whose name is Michael Bowen. He's usually referred to as Dr. Michael Bowen, and he proposed this theory in 1978. It's roughly like about 43 years ago, maybe more than 40 years ago now. So what is he proposing in this theory? When he looks at the family, what is he saying? Right? This is what we want to discuss. What is he saying? Well, first and foremost, he looks at the family and he says that the family is a system. Hence the word in between, right? That the family is a system. So we can start with that. What does that mean? He says that the family is a system. What kind of a system? So we can go back and think about the systems that we know from our own experiences. Right? One example is an education system. What exactly is an education system? Or maybe a different way of asking the same question, what makes it a system? When we say education system in Malawi is like this, what actually makes it to be a system? So that's one example, education system. What other systems do we know? Well, it could be in the family or it could be just in general. So, like what I've given you an example later, an education system. What are other examples of systems that you know? A health system. Okay, so that's like a health system, right? By health system, you mean what exactly? Like what the Minister of Health does, or maybe you've got like a different way of thinking about it. Okay, so health system. So Malawian health system. Okay, what else? Agriculture system. Okay, fine. Good example. Marvin? Other examples of systems. You're still thinking about it. Okay, that's all right. Blood circulation system. Yeah? It is a system. We call it a system, no? Okay, good. So, what is it that makes these examples that we've given? What is it that makes them systems?
According to my understanding, when you say something is a system, it is something that has an input and output.
Okay, very good. So, one way of understanding a system, and I assume by this we're thinking in terms of like a computer system, for example, right? So a computer system, we're taught, not so good at computers, but we are taught that the computer has got the input and the output. So even your phone is somehow like a form of a computer, so it has got like an input and output process to it. Okay. What else would characterize? What else would define a system? Because remember, according to Dr. Bowen, a family can be looked at as a system. Right. So apart from what you have just shared, Christine, another way of understanding a system is that a system is mostly made up of parts. Parts, right? These parts can be mostly different, even though they belong to the same system, right? Yeah. Like when you look at the body of a human being, it can be regarded as a system also, right? But the body of a human being has got these different parts. Different parts. Like the hand is not the same as the head, right? And it's not the same as the feet or the leg. So you've got all these parts, all of them put together, they make up the system called a human being. Yeah? But what makes it a system then is not necessarily the parts themselves, but the relationship between the parts. That's what makes it a system. So when we go back to the example of the education system, what are the parts? If you think about like the different parts of think about like the Malawian education system, maybe you can share about the Zambian education system. Yeah? But what are these parts? We can call them parts, or we can call them components, or if you like, we can even use the better term, the elements of a system. These parts that make up this system. So, when we go back to the example of an education system, we can see it's made up of different parts, of different elements. For example, we have got the preschool. It's one component of the whole education system. Is this true? Yes. So that if we wanted to draw something like this, if we wanted to show it, this would be our education system, the whole of it. But we start identifying different parts, different components of the education system. So we say maybe it starts with preschools. This is the first component of the system. What is the other component? Or the other part of this system? Sorry? Primary. Okay. So we have primary here. Primary school. And? Okay, maybe secondary or high school or whatever it is that is called. And? Tertiary. Okay. So universities, colleges, technical schools, etc., etc. Tertiary education. Secondary education, primary education system. These are the different parts that make up that system. But for this to become a system, it must mean that this is connected to that, and this is connected to that one, and that one is connected to that one. There must be a connection between the parts. There must be a relationship between this part, that part, and that part. In a sense, if a child starts schooling here, it is expected that the next step will be primary. And then eventually, hopefully, that they go to the university, college, and so on and so forth. Whatever they are learning here will help them to become successful in here. The foundation they get here helps them to the next step, and so on and so forth. See this? So this becomes an system. And you can think about so many other types of systems, agriculture system, whatever system, Well, according to this theory then, according to Michael Bowen, a family must be looked at also as a system. And therefore you can begin to identify the different components within that system, within the family. What are these parts in the family? So maybe you've got the father as a part, or as an element, or as a component of that system. Then the mother. Then the children. And maybe this system continues to grow. Grandparents, right? Cousins, nieces, and aunties and uncles, and so it becomes a system. But remember, it can only become a system only if the parts, the elements of the system are interrelated and interconnected. If they are not connected somehow, connection and I want to emphasize these two words. There must be the parts of the system, the members of this system, they must be and interrelated. That's what will make this system. Otherwise, if the different parts of the system are not interconnected and they are not interrelated, it is no longer a system. Because you've broken it apart, then each one of these parts is sort of like spread around. They are not connected to each other. No longer a system. Clear? Okay, so I'm taking it step by step. We are spending all this time so that because where we are going, then it becomes a bit, hey, where is it going? What's happening? But at this piecemeal, then it helps. So far, what we're discussing now, what we're saying, is that we look at the family as a system. But these different components and elements within the system, they must be interconnected and interrelated. So, we're going to introduce another idea of this theory. Apart from looking at the family as a system, there's another question. What kind of a system is this? If we're making a claim that yes, now we understand that the family system, what kind of a system is this? Well, this is where family systems theory differs from the definitions we have looked at of a family, but also most importantly, from the component we just introduced when we said the family can also be regarded as a spiritual union of two people. Huh? So what does it say? How does it differ? Well, according to Dr. Bowen, a family is maybe biological parts related to each other, interconnected biologically by blood, right? Interconnected by blood or interrelated by blood. Oh yeah, maybe they can be interconnected or interrelated via marriage. Not necessarily by blood, but by marriage. Maybe. But according to Dr. Bowen, he thinks that when you look at a family as a system, it is a system of emotional interconnectedness and emotional interrelatedness. The term emotional is important. So you can think about the family as being biological, but he says, oh yeah, no, but wait a minute. What is important here is that these people, the different players in the system, the father, the mother, the child, what is important to understand is that these people are interconnected and interrelated to each other. How? Emotionally. So what kind of a system is this? It is an emotional system. What does it mean? The people in the family, the elements within the family, they are interconnected and interrelated by emotions. We shouldn't forget that, because that plays a big role in understanding the behavior of the people in the family. It plays a big role in understanding the behavior of the child in the family. The emotion. Such that it almost feels like, for example, if one member of the family, if one element of the family as a system, if one component of that family is affected emotionally, that person who is affected emotionally has got an effect on the emotions of others. Is this true? Yes. Your father, your cousin, your sister, your mother is emotionally stressed. What happens to the other members? They are also intended, they become emotionally stressed. This is emotions. So the transference of emotions from one member of the family has got an impact on the emotions of others. Because it almost looks like all of you are living under the same emotional skin, under the same emotional roof. That whatever happens to one member has got an impact on the others. So the relationship, the pattern of relationships that exist in this system is one based on emotions. If the father is angry in the house that particular day, everyone gets affected. And you tell each other, hey, today he's in a bad mood, today he's in a foul mood. Everybody else counts. People run to their rooms, or you don't want to be near him. Even your mother knows. Even your mother will tell you. Sometimes, your dad today is in a bad mood. I don't know what happened wherever he went to, but today, don't do rubbish. You're going to get. It's emotional. Is it clear?
Yes.
So when we're exploring this theory further, in the back of our mind, we have to remember that we want to understand what kind of emotional relationships exist in a family system, in a family as a system. What is the pattern of emotional relationships? That's what we want to explore. This becomes patterns of emotional relationship. Just to give one example, in this system, in this particular system, what you begin to see, an example, what you begin to see is that family members, they begin to seek each other's attention. Is this true? Mm-hmm. But at the level of the emotion. That's what it means, right? It's not just a physical attention that's required. It's mostly the emotional attention. The child wants the attention of the parents. The husband wants the attention of the wife. Similarly, the wife begins to seek attention, wants attention from the husband. So at the level of seeking attention, we can see it. It's an emotional connection that someone is looking for. Yeah. Another example of emotional patterns of emotional relationships is seeking validation. Do you understand this term? Validation? Well, validation, an example of validation is when you do something good, right? You want other people to recognize that what you have done is good. You want other people to validate your behavior. Right? So a child who is working hard in school and gets a good position number one, they go home, what are they looking for from their parents? We say they are looking for praise, right? But praise is a form of validation. It's like you strengthen that behavior. Say, yes, you've done very well. This is good performance. Make sure that next time you do also, you work hard and you get position one as well. This is a parent validating the behavior of the child. And there are so many other ways in which we seek validation. So one other example I can think of, maybe not necessarily a very good example, is when a child goes to church because he knows or she knows that by going to church it will receive praise from the family members. So maybe that. That's just the opening statements of the theory. Now we go to the other, less interesting things. Well, Bowen says for us to understand deeper the theory itself, the family systems theory, in order to understand the family deeper, he proposes a number of concepts. And I want to go back to the idea, to the issue of a concept. In the first class, I introduced this because it's deliberately because I knew we were going to get to it anyways. And what did we say the concept is? If you remember. Concept is an idea, very well. Yes, it is. Concept is an idea. So this is something that I said also last time, if you remember. We said a theory is made up of two things. And remember, we are looking at a theory, right? Yes, and we said that a theory mostly is made up of two things. Two main things. What are these things? Concepts and principles. And we said that every theory that you can come across, maybe one of the questions you may need to ask yourself is, what are the main concepts of this theory? Because the concepts are the ones that make the theory itself. A theory without concepts is literally not a strong theory. So apart from concepts, then the theory must also have principles. So what I want us to look at today is to look at what are the main concepts of the family systems theory. And according to Michael Bowen, he has proposed 8 of them. 8 concepts. All these concepts, they are connected to each other. All these concepts, they help us to understand the family somehow. Especially the emotional relationships that are available in the family. So, what are these concepts? Remember, these concepts are the ones that make up this theory. So we're going to look at each one of them. 8 of them. The first one is what is referred as triangle or triangle. The concept of a triangle. Then, the second one we'll look at is the concept of differentiation. Then we'll look at a concept called nuclear family emotional system. Then we're going to explore the concept called sibling position. And then family projection processes. Multi-generational emotional system. Society emotional processes. And the last one of these concepts is called emotional cut-off. These 8 are regarded as key concepts that makes the foundation of this theory here. We have got the concept of a triangle. We have got the concept of differentiation, the concept of sibling position, family projection processes, society emotional processes, multi-generational emotional system, emotional cutoff, and nuclear family emotional system. So all these 8 put together, they are the ones that make up this theory, the family systems theory. So we start breaking down each one of them one by one to try to understand how does each one of those concepts help us to understand the family as an emotional unit. Any questions so far before we move on? Yes, Christine? No. Tao? No? Okay. So then I'll take off. I'll just have to take off this. Start by exploring the concept of a triangle. So, let's start, yes. This one? This one?
Yes.
This is mat generational, not mat general. So, mat generation, no. So like more generations, like from one generation to the other. So mat, many generations. Thank you for that. Okay, so we start. From what you have seen, from what you have seen or what you have experienced, most families, right? Most families start with a relationship between two people. Is this true? Most families, right? At least the ones that I know of. I am yet to see a family, well, maybe, but I'm yet to see a family that begins with 3 people. Maybe a man with 2 girlfriends, they start a family. Maybe in other places it happened, but I'm yet to see. But in many cases we see, even if it's not at the level of the family, but many relationships, think about many relationships, especially romantic relationships, they mostly start with 2. Yeah? Maybe a boy and a girl, they fancy each other and they start a relationship. 2 people, mostly. Even though maybe along the way some other things may come in, but the natural way of starting a relationship somehow seems to be involving 2 people. So that kind of a relationship that involves 2 individuals, it has got a term. It's called a dyad. Okay? A dyad. In other books they spell it like this, or in others it's spelled as D-I-A-D. Dyad meaning 2. So a relationship involving 2 people is referred to as a dyad. And by the way, in this relationship, these 2 people are connected to each other emotionally. As much as they are also connected to each other physically, but in many cases, according to this theory, that the relationship that exists between these 2 people is one that is based on emotions. In fact, when one person professes their love to another person, this is an emotion. Yeah? I like you. This is how it begins in many cases. It begins with I like. Because we don't want to jump to I love. Maybe it's too quickly. I like you. Yeah, I like how you walk. I like. Then like is replaced by love. I love you. But like, love, these are terms that describes our emotions. So when you're telling someone, I really like you or I really love you, this is an emotional expression of how you feel. Feeling, right? Feeling, emotion. This is how you feel about the other person. So the dyad in this kind of a relationship, these two partners, they are connected to each other, they are related to each other at the level of feelings or emotions. To Vana, is this clear? Okay. Now, in this two-man relationship, some things happen. In this relationship, these two people, they experience joy and happiness. Is this true?
Yes.
They're happy. You see them holding hands, they're walking with each other. Especially this month. This month is a particularly interesting one. Flowers, chocolates, and fancy clothes and things like that. That's like this side of the relationship. What color is this side of the hand? Well, maybe white. I don't know, but as compared to this side here, this is also the other side of the relationship, right? This is no joy here. This is no happiness. This is no lovey-dovey. This side here is tension and stress. This is a relationship. Both sides, happiness and joy, and sadness and tension and frustrations and disappointments. This side here. This is what you begin to observe in this relationship, right? Okay. Now, Dr. Bowen was not really interested in this side of the relationship, of the dialogue. He says, well, if there is this, then things are good. But his focus is on this side here, this side of anxiety and stress. Anxiety and stress. He's interested in that side. We are beginning to describe the patterns of relationships that exist in a family as a system or in a relationship. So he's interested in this side of stress and anxiety. So we can actually call this as, relational anxiety. The anxiety that exists in a relationship. Relational. This is relational anxiety. So, maybe there could be like a number of examples we can give. What is the source of this anxiety? What is the source? Where does this relational anxiety come from? In this dyad, in this two relationship, where does it come from? Well, according to Dr. Bowen, he thinks the source of anxiety, relational anxiety, is on what he calls internal and external contradictions. And we're going to give examples of this. Internal and external contradictions. Between these two people who are in a relationship, there seem to exist what he is referring to as internal and external contradictions. So what is an example of internal contradiction in a relationship involving two people? Source of anxiety, external versus internal. Internal example. The girl is a vegetarian. The man in the relationship is not a vegetarian. They go to a restaurant, they must choose what kind of food they need to eat. Already there is a contradiction of what kind of food they must order. At that level, what you are going to begin to observe is that the two parties are going to be experiencing anxiety. This is a contradiction. On a very basic example of just food. Right? On a Sunday, the boyfriend wants to watch football. The girlfriend wants to go and attend Chinkoso. What is it called? Engagement ceremony. Internal contradictions. The man wants to watch football. The girl. What happens at this point, even though they have not even made a decision, they are all experiencing anxiety. You see the build-up of this? This is internal contradictions between a dyad, two people relationship. What could be other examples? Right, okay. Be an example. Internal control. What about external? External means that the two of you do not really have a contradiction, but that there is a contradiction between what the two of you need, want, or desire, and what society or your community actually desires, wants, and needs. Example?
Maybe the family of the man don't like the girl, or the man likes the girl.
Contradiction. Externally, the family doesn't like the girl. Right? From society, from the community. External. And so what happens at that stage? The dyad begins to experience sad. Let me ask you this question. Is it easier for you? I know this question is different for so many other people. Is it easier for you to start a conversation with a stranger, someone you've just met? Or it is difficult? Is it? Why is it easier for you? Are we talking about female stranger or male stranger? For you, it's easy for both. Okay, why?
Because that's why we make friendship, because the joy we are just born like that, friendship will come
Ooh. So if you're going to meet a stranger in a bus, you're going back home, you're in a bus, you're very comfortable having a conversation with that kind of a person all the way until you get where you are, or maybe it doesn't even have to be up to where you are. But for you, it's easier to start a conversation with someone that you don't know, you've never met before, say in a bus.
Yes.
Is it easier for you? Okay. Because I know there are people like that. I usually find it difficult to have a conversation with a person that I don't really know. So I could literally sit in a bus with someone close to me on a chair, the whole trip. Nothing. Just maybe greeting and then that's it. It's very awkward for me. But because we are also very different, we also are programmed different. I know there are other people who find it easier to talk to strangers. On the go, so that you are one of them. Not that there's any sort of judgment associated with this. It is what it is. But one thing that I've noticed when you are talking to strangers, it can, for some people, it can be a moment of stress and anxiety. For a stranger, really, because you don't know if you say something, maybe they will be happy or maybe you make them angry, and that kind of a situation makes you anxious. You become a bit stressed. So you notice that in a conversation between two strangers, mostly what they do is they talk about general things.
Yes.
The weather. There's a lot of rain this year. Or politics, if they know anything about that. Or sports. General things like that, Because you can't really talk about very detailed and specific things to a stranger. You can't even share your deepest things to them. They're just a stranger, So your conversation is at very superficial kind of conversation. And maybe that's like you start to know that's to be like external source of anxiety. So, moving on then. Dr. Bowen says, in any moment when the two man or the two people relationship, when they experience anxiety or when they experience stress, what happens now? Then they involve an outsider. Remember, when we use the word they involve an outsider, we are thinking only at the level of the individual. They bring in a third party. They bring in a third person. They involve a third person in this situation of stress. Think about it. A boy and a girl, they argue. They've got a relational disagreement, right? What happens to the girl? The girl shares this issue with a friend. The relationship at that point, at least in terms of the emotional relationship is no longer a dyad. It becomes, what does it become? The emotional relationship is no longer based on two. It has been extended to a third party, to a third person. That relationship, that emotional relationship, is no longer a dyad. It becomes a triad. And there's a word that we use. It's called a triad. It has moved from a dyad to a triad. A relationship, an emotional relationship that's based on a triangular pattern. Boyfriend, girlfriend. The third party becomes a friend. It could be a friend to the girl or a friend to the boy. But nevertheless, what you have done is you have created a triangle. This triangle is what begins to describe the emotional relationships between people in this particular emotional unit. So maybe now you have disagreed with your boyfriend. You go to your best friend and you share and say, hey, I said, you know what happened today? We did this, and I was angry with him. And your friend says, it will pass. Remember last time it happened like that? Let's let it go. No, but this time around, it was too much. What you're doing there, do you realize what you're doing there? At that moment,
No.
you are releasing stress. Even though your friend may not give you solutions, and in many cases they don't give you solutions, right? They make it worse even, most of the time, they make it worse. Like, just dump him. Worst kind of advice you can give to your friend. Don't tell your friend to dump their partner. Don't. They report you. This is what naturally happens. In many cases, this is what happens. They're like, he was telling me that I should dump you. And then the relationship between your boyfriend and your friend then becomes sour. Yeah. I learned the hard way. Many times. The friend comes to you crying and you feel sorry for your friend. That emotion, they are sharing, they are pouring all their emotions to you. And I feel like dying. You're like, no, not yet, don't die. There are many men out there, okay? You remember Jack and Fusra Tairagoja, that one who wanted you that time. So, I see it. When they get back together, she'll report you. She was advising me that I should go for that other person. But what you're beginning to notice is that human beings in a pattern of a dyad relationship, an emotional relationship, whenever they find themselves in a situation of stress, they pull in a third party. Naturally. They bring in a third party. Now, even when it doesn't involve a boy and a girl or a man and a woman in a relationship, but even they themselves, sometimes they will not bring in a third person, an individual. Do you understand that? So bringing in another person into this relationship to create a triangle is one way of doing it. You can bring in a friend, or you can talk to your mother if you're closer to her, or you can talk to your aunt if you're closer to her, or you can talk to your pastor. The pastor becomes the third party in this kind of relationship. Now it has become a triangle. You're sharing your emotional stress. You're releasing You want to release the stress, so you go to your pastor, like, Pastor, I think I've done enough. I have really persevered. But at this point, no. And of course, a good pastor will tell you, no, this is part of the relationship. But you know what? Something else that people do in a relationship, in a diet like this one, to create a triangle, to release their anxiety and stress, is that when there is this relational anxiety, they may not bring in an individual necessarily, but they may create an event that becomes a stress reliever for them. Right? So an example, if a boy and a girl in a relationship, they disagree, the boy may decide, can we go out for dinner? The dinner is an event. You understand that? It's no longer an individual at this point, right? It's no longer like you bring in a person, but what you're doing is you're creating a third component that moves the relationship beyond a dyad. It becomes a triad. At this point, it's not a person, but you're involving an event. So what happens when the two of you go to dinner? Supposing you have agreed to go to dinner. The dinner is not necessarily about food. The dinner is a way of releasing the stress. So you enjoy the food. As you enjoy the food, then you have a conversation like, yeah, I think now it's this, oh, I forgive you. And then after that, then you are together again. That event created a moment of a what? Triangle. Or I've seen also in some other cases, the two of them, you know those awkward moments when you're failing to communicate to each other? That's what I'm thinking about. But another way is when Mkani is abuterana. That moment is a moment of awkward. When you don't have a lot of stories to tell each other, you gossip about other people, and then what? And then there are no more stories because you're trying to think hard. What should I tell her? Because now I've run out of stories. Now she has run out. That moment of awkward, sometimes it can bring. And I've experienced this before. I don't know what to tell her right now. So human beings being clever as we are, what do we do? And we say, can we watch a movie? Okay? So you say, we'll watch a movie together, right? The movie then becomes, maybe not even just a topic, it can become a topic, but it becomes a part of the track. So there's a girl, there's a boy here, and then we are watching the movie. So because the two of you have run out of things to tell each other, then the focus becomes the movie. This is a way of creating a track. And what you're doing is you're actually relieving the stress, the anxiety that you're experiencing at that point. And I've seen people, even married couples, when they are not good at communicating to each other, they resort to third-party things. Yeah? Maybe it's not enough to tell the other person, I love you. Is this true for women?
Yeah.
If your partner says, I love you, it seems like as if the words are not enough.
Yes.
It must come with something.
Yes.
The formation of some kind of a triangle, the object becomes the third part of this triangle. So, all these examples we have given, they are a process, right? They are a process. What kind of a process is this? It is a process that is aimed at relieving stress and anxiety, especially in a relationship involving two. One of my cousins, when he got married, these two people, they really loved each other. You could see these people, they found each other. They were made from the same cloth. But they were built from the same soil, as it were. But they kept on experiencing external caused stress, especially from the father, from the family, the parents. They were married for a year, and you know what happens? The parents starts asking grandchildren, where are the children? Yeah, it happens. I mean, these are real things. Maybe if you have never experienced them, I'm sure you will at some point. Their parents, they start asking, their uncles, what do you want about? What about a child? You need a child. So you're experiencing the two of you, even though you know you love each other, even though you don't have kids, or the two of you, right? At that moment, you begin to experience anxiety, right? And because of that stress, you need to find a way to relieve, because it's too much for many people. It is a lot. The stress happens every other day. You're being asked about this thing. Yeah? Maybe even before you got married, but when you're in a relationship, what questions are people asking? Yeah? When are you getting married? When are you getting married? This is externally sourced pressure. And then, in order to relieve this pressure, what do you have? Got two options, really, right? You've got two options, I think, at the end of the day. No, maybe three. Two practical ones. If there's so much pressure like that, what do? You either get married, right? Because now you're no longer going to be questioned about when are you going to get married. Or you can end the relationship so that people stop asking you about this question. I don't know what the other option is, really. Or you could just let it there, just don't listen to them, but they'll still ask you. So the pressure doesn't stop. Yeah? Now, let's say you've listened to them and you've gotten married. Does it end there? No, because then another set of questions emerges. Now it becomes, what about the children? Then you would say, oh, okay, but this is a lot of pressure. Yeah, I mean, the two of you really want to have a child, but this pressure, this constant pressure, I say, let's just have a child. These people, to keep them quiet. And then you try, and then you have a child, right? At that moment, what has happened now is that the relationship between the husband and the wife is no longer a dyad. It has become a triad. The family now has moved beyond just two people. It is now three. Right? Now, notice what happens when that actually happens. The attention that existed between the husband and the wife is no longer the same, is it? Mm-hmm. Yeah? Because the wife needs to spend time with the child. Similarly, the husband needs to spend time with the child. As the time is split, the time spent emotionally, remember this is emotional, at the level of emotion, as the emotional time is spent more on the child, these two, one way they could become separated emotionally. They are no longer spending as much time as they used to. So it becomes like emotionally split. Or one of these two feels like you stopped giving me attention. You're putting all your attention and time on the baby. The man feels like the wife doesn't love him anymore. You love the child more than me. So again, you have created a triangle, a relationship, in essence. All these examples that I've given you, all these examples, their process of drawing in a third party meaning person, the third person, or an event, etc. This whole process here is called now, can you read this? This way. Are you able to read? Triangulation. Okay. So the process of bringing in a third party or an event or whatever it is that you bring in order to relieve your stress and anxiety, that one we call it triangulation. Next time your friend comes to you and they're complaining about their boyfriend or their girlfriend, just know what they're doing is they are triangulating. Like, dude, do you know that what you're doing is actually you're triangulating? What does it mean? You're trying to relieve your emotional stress with me in a situation involving you. This is triangulation. And we're not saying that that's bad. It naturally helps us to understand the relationships in a family setting. So triangulation can be in different ways, right? In different forms. It can be through an event, creating an event to individual dinner. That is triangulation. You should be able to observe and notice that. Okay. Maybe having a child is also triangulation. Maybe talking to your pastor is also triangulation. Maybe the two of you deciding to watch a movie for that particular night, it is also. But remember, this process, all that it aims to do, Christine, all that it aims to do is what? So then in practice, when you're actually observing your study child in the home, where the child comes from, or in a school setting, are you able to pick out this process of triangulation? Are we able to see that the child already, even at that age, they are able to do triangulation? What are the examples that we are observing? Do you see this? Do you understand what I'm saying? Okay. So remember, on the practical side of the course, it requires you to observe the child either in the setting of the family or the school. So the question is, when you're doing your observation, or in school, which are there, you're observing the child, can you pick out patterns of triangulation from the behavior of the child? Both in the home and school. If you go to the home, for example, and you look at the relationship between the father and the mother and the child, are you seeing that there are certain examples of triangulation? For example, the mother and the child, they are in the home, right? On that day when you go to do the observation, the mother and the child, they are in the home. But for one reason or the other, the mother feels like she can't really give a lot of time to the child. You see that? Because maybe she feels she's busy with something or she needs to do something. And what do mothers naturally do when they are faced with that kind of a situation? When they know, and this gives them stress, right? Because they need to spend time with the child, but they know they don't have a lot of time to do that also. They have to do other things. What do they do if you have observed? The most common ones, two of them, most common ones. The first one, they'll call in an appeal. Okay? They'll say, the maid, say, can you come and help me with taking care of the child? What that woman has done is that her relationship between herself and the child, these two, she has brought in a third party. That process, that is an example of triangulation. What is another way? The most common one these days. Baby is crying, and probably crying, and the mother is becoming stressed. She needs to find a way of releasing this stress. What does she do? Or it could be the man. It doesn't have to be the woman all the time. What do they do? The most common one. It has to do with the remote control.
No.
Yeah?
They make the child to watch cartoons.
Yeah. Watch cartoons. The TV then becomes the triform triangle. What the woman is doing is she is triangulating. She wants to relieve herself of this pressure, of the stress of having to take care of the child, and she just switches on and says, watch. And then the child goes quiet. that moment the stress has been released. So when you actually go into the families, are you able to pick out such kind of things and say, from what I observed today, I observed these examples of triangulation.
So I have a question. Maybe the children that are going to find there are the single body. How are we going to do that?
Yeah, so in this case then your observation of triangulation must not necessarily be focused on just people. Yeah? It can be focused on objects. For example, the mother throws a toy at the child, right? Like play with this toy. What she has done in that case is that this relationship between two people now has been extended to an object, which is a toy in that case, right? Or she prepares food. Food then becomes the object of triangulation. In that case, then to relieve herself of this stress she's experiencing because there's the relationship between the child and the mother, that's what is that characterized by stress, she will try to relieve that stress. Or even the child herself. Even the child. Right? The moment that she sees, in another case there is, the child will notice the mother is angry today. Do you notice? Kids can know.
Yes.
And what do they do?
They don't stay close to the child.
So somehow distance themselves and they start focusing on something else. And these are like the small things that you can begin to pick up. That will give you an idea of the nature of the emotional relationship that exists between the different members of the family. Yeah. So this is the concept of a triangle that Bowen proposes. And remember, it's just a theory. Whether it actually works in practice, you will be in the field to see if it's actually happening. I mean, the examples can be drawn from that.
I hope it works.
Yeah. We always hope that the theory somehow works. Just one more thing I wanted to add to this concept of triangulation. There are two types of triangulation. Huh? There is two types of triangulation. There is what's called dysfunctional. This is dysfunctional. DYS. DYS, then functional. Dysfunctional triangulation. Then the other one is functional, from the word to function. Functional triangulation. The difference between dysfunctional and functional triangulation is that dysfunctional triangulation is the one that let's start with functional. Functional triangulation is the one that contributes to solving a problem for the long term. A functional triangulation is the one which contributes to solving a problem. Not just at that moment, but for a long period of time. You call that functional triangulation. So if you have a problem, right, and you're experiencing stress because of that problem, is this true? That is, if you have a problem and this problem is actually causing you stress, right? One way of resolving or solving this stress is you can triangulate. Clear? Okay. Now there are some types of triangulation that helps solve the problem for a long period of time. Okay? And then there are some types of triangulations that do not even contribute to the solving of a problem. In fact, they make the problem worse. You understand that? Okay. So, the triangulation that helps to solve the problem, they are referred to as functional triangulation. The ones that perpetuate, the ones that make the problem worse, they are referred to as dysfunctional. Okay? Here's an example I wanted to give you. Have you ever seen in a relationship, in a family, right? Have you ever seen that, maybe you could get examples, but this example I'm going to give. In a family where the mother and the father are not getting along, like they're in a marital conflict, right? At that moment, you're going to begin to see a process of triangulation. And an example of the process of triangulation involves the mother forming a partnership with the child or with the children. I usually don't call it a partnership, I call it an alliance. Okay? The mother forms an alliance with the children. Why? So that they can isolate the father. The mother presents herself to her children as I am better, the father is the one who is bad. In that case, the children take sides. They take the side of the mother. And collectively, the children and the mother, they start blaming the father. In that kind of a situation, this pattern of triangulation, do you see that it's a triangulation? How? Initially, what we have is the father and the mother disagreements, right? They are in a relational conflict. So what happens to one of these two? One of these two resorts to forming an alliance with the children. They are relieving their stress, the stress that exists between the two of them, they are spreading it to the children. This is triangulation, right? Okay. So then the result is that you isolate the father from the children. If you are the mother, you are in a camp of you and the children, and the husband is on the other side. So my question is this dysfunctional or it is a functional triangulation? This? Why? Potentially, yes. Potentially, it will make the situation worse. It doesn't solve the problem. If it actually doesn't solve the problem, how will this apply? Because once the father feels isolated, he too is in a situation of stress. What is he going to do? Find someone. He is also going to triangulate. He's going to find someone else, right? To complete or at least to dissipate, to release the stress or the anxiety that he's feeling. No, that doesn't solve the problem. It creates what? More problems. In that case, this form of triangulation is a dysfunctional triangulation. In other examples, you find the disagreements between the husband and the wife. The husband resorts to drugs or alcohol. What has he done? Triangulation. Is this functional triangulation or dysfunctional triangulation? Dysfunctional. Makes the situation worse. Every time you're drunk, you come back, you're in an argument with the wife, and then you go back and drink, and then you become an argument. Very dysfunctional. But obviously, there could be other forms of triangulations which are functional. These are the ones that resolve the problem. That's why in our culture, we work with the armed forces. Even though their process of makes things worse, they don't like there's so much thing. But you have to find means of functional triangulation as compared to dysfunctional. So this is just one concept of the theory that somehow helps us to begin to understand the nature of emotional relationships that exist in a family. And what is the nature of these emotional relationships? It looks like even though the relationship begins as a dyad, it can extend to a triad through this process of triangulation. Question? Observation? Or example? More experience? It helps that way. Probably. That's a little bit, because we didn't give an example of function.
I'll give the same example to function.
Right.
Maybe the man and the father have a disagreement. So maybe they have children at least. An age where they can make a good decision. Maybe they'll sit together and discuss and bring a solution to that. If they make a decision, it will be function.
Yeah. That's a good example. Very good example. Or if you're a religious person, well, why don't you come and pray together? Yeah? Let's pray.
That's what happens when the mother and the father have disagreements. So that they have the children, they'll call you and then they say, let's begin with a prayer.
Before the conversation starts, okay. If it helps.
And in the prayer, they'll say, no one should get angry.
It's preemptive. It's preventing further anger. Yeah? No one, we pray to you that no one should get angry.
Where someone makes a mistake, they should be able
To understand and forget. Okay, all right. So for today, we stop there. And next time we meet, we will continue and we'll look at differentiation. Okay. So it would also be helpful if you can do a bit of your own small research, like maybe Google or whatever materials you may find, right? And then just try to see if you can read anything on differentiation. So that next time when we meet, it doesn't have to be just me preaching, but that it's kind of like a conversation on this aspect. Okay. The other plan that I have is that we start the observations next week, right? Yeah. So the idea will be that before next week, before Wednesday, I would have given you a letter, right? A letter that you can use. In case you're not thinking about adopting a study child from here, maybe you've got another place that you want to go to, they will need a letter that you're a student and that what you're doing is just for academic purposes and so on and so forth. So hopefully by today's Wednesday, I'm hoping by Friday, I would have given you that letter. And then when you have decided which school you want to go to, then you can use that letter and as a letter of introduction. So they allow you to do the study. So hopefully that if everything goes according to plan, then you can start your observations next week, Wednesday.
That means after class.
That would mean
you should be going maybe at least after during break.
Yeah. The way that it would work out also is that on the days that we decide that you have to go for observation, we may not have a class, right? Because you need that time for observation, and you really need a bit of time. So it could be like one Wednesday when you're supposed to meet, that maybe you focus on observation, just that particular day. Or it could be that even though we have met on a Wednesday, but after the class then you can go for observation. So there are those two possibilities also. Okay, thank you so much and have yourself a good day.
So you said you send
I can share.